Good evening. It is 6:00 p.m. on Thursday, September 7th. I call this meeting of the Wichita County Commissioner's Court to order. This is a special evening edition of your favorite Commissioner's Court. There's only one item on the agenda. This is our public hearing on our proposed 2024 budget. And hold on, we're not on yet.
Hey, at least you know what you got to say.
Got to practice.
There we go.
All right. So I'll try this again for those who aren't in the room. At 6:00 p.m. on Thursday, September 7th, 2023, I call this meeting of Wichita County Commissioner's Court to order. There's only one item on the agenda tonight. This is our public hearing for the proposed 2024 budget and tax rate. So before we get started on that, I just want to introduce things really quickly. For anyone who, as a member of the public who's watching this either live right now on YouTube or Zoom, or who watches this in the future, I just want to thank you for watching and for your interest in how your tax dollars are spent. Here's the plan for the hearing. We're going to do just a budget process overview, something that everyone in this room is familiar with, but again, for the members of the public who might be watching, wanted to talk through what that looks like for them. Give a 30,000-foot summary of the budget, talk through the changes that have been made since the proposed budget was filed, talk through any decision points that the court needs to make. I know I've got one, but anything else that members of the court or anyone else wants to bring up, and then allow for a chance for public comment or questions. And I said this when we first did this in court a couple of weeks ago, but I just want to reiterate it again. I want to thank all of the department heads for their hard work in preparing their first draft request and for their meeting with us to talk through what their requests were, what changes we'd like to see. I'd like to thank all the commissioners for their work and attendance at a lot of those meetings and their work on this budget. And I would also like to thank the auditor's office for a lot of hours and a lot of hard work that went into preparing the document, doing the work in Munis, and then doing a lot of data input on changes that have been made since then. So before I dig into the process, would any commissioners like to make any introductory comments, or you also want to jump in?
No, Judge, I'd just like to say, and I think everybody is aware of this, but you had a double duty task because Willie Wall not here and served as the advocate on the budget for the last 3 county judges. So you got thrown straight into the frying pan and you handled it well and you dug to the bottom. So I just want to commend you on that because I know it was a bunch of work and you had to dissect everything before you could start putting it back together. So,
and everything else doesn't just stop.
No.
And your commissioners have noticed that tremendously. And I can say right now, we really appreciate the amount of work that you put into it and how serious you've taken it. I can't commend you enough on the amount of work you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will say it was a little extra work at times, but having to do that level of granular detail made me more aware of the budget and honestly helped acquaint me a little better with each of our departments and what they do. And I'm glad I had to do it now that I've done it. In the middle of it, it was a challenge, but I appreciate those words. Thank you.
And I will say something else to the public on this matter. When I came into office was not very long ago, 3 years ago. Looking at our budget and looking at prior budgets and trying to make sense of them, it was very difficult to do. There was a lot of discrepancies in numbers. The budget itself altogether is so much cleaner now and so much more I would say more user-friendly, more professionally done, and I think it's easier to get the more transparent numbers out to the public. So that to me makes a big deal.
Yeah, and again, moving to Munis, which is something this court did a number of years ago, helped with that. And then I will again commend our auditor's office for their hard work and good work on this as well. So, anyone else on any introductory comments? Okay. Then just a quick overview of the process. So I sent out a letter to department heads in April and asked them to get their departmental draft. So with their take on what they were going to need for 2024, asked them to get those done and submitted to us by mid-May. Then in the months of May, June, and July, this court met with every single department head in the county to talk through their requests and to work through their budgets. It was, every one of those was open to the public, every one of those was posted. We do want to be as transparent as possible. And every one of those was open to every commissioner. And so I know that one thing I wanted to make sure that the whole court was able to be as much a part of the whole budget process as they wanted to be. So those finished up by the end of July, and then we, along with the auditor's office, have worked to get the final touches done on the proposed budget, which was submitted on August 15th. We've had 2 workshops in court since then for commissioners to go over the budget, talk through changes, make any revisions that we wanted to do. We are having this public hearing this evening, which is kind of one last chance to go through it and talk through some things we might want to do differently. And then on Monday, September 11th, in our regular court session, we will have a vote on the tax rate and the budget. I will say this is obviously my first year to do this. I've already seen some things that at the end of the process I'd like to do differently next year that will help me communicate better with department heads at the front end to have some ideas on better ways to get at what are ongoing expenses versus one-time expenses, so we can do a better job of tracking those year over year. And that this is the culmination of 5 months of work by a lot of people. So with that, let's do an overview of the budget. There's not going to be a lot different that I present here tonight from what I did a couple of weeks ago, but we do have maybe different audience listening at home, so that's why I want to go through this. As you all know, the challenge of doing county budget is, there are a lot of them, but one of the main ones is that we are predicting a budget starting point that's still 4 months in the future. And so we have a decent idea, but we don't have a clear picture of what our end of 2023 numbers are going to be to start in 2024. So you're starting off on a projection, and then you're going from there 16 months in the future to get to the end of the budget. I think for us, that means that this is in a lot of ways an art, not a science. And I said this in court a couple of weeks ago, but I think y'all know this about me now. I am more risk averse than some others would be, and pretty conservative in estimates. So if there's a side to err on in revenue projections, I'm going to err on the side of being too low. And if there's a side to err on the side of on expenditures, I'm going to err on the side of being too high. Because the last thing I want us to do with this budget is to do a document that is not able to meet. It doesn't set us up for success if we have the worst case scenarios happen across the board. But we have to do that while also maintaining a good level that doesn't cause us to overtax Wichita County taxpayers. And so again, that's an art, trying to find what that balance is.
Which we all are.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
we all are.
That's right. The county is in a healthy spot financially. Thanks to the good work of Tommy and his team and Purdy Brandon, we continue to hit our collection goals around the same spot every year. The year of tax goals, it ends up being right around 98.5%. And when you get to the next year, it ends up actually going all the way up to 100 and over when you include penalties and fees. So that allows this court, the fact that that's so consistent year over year, that allows this court to be able to project pretty well. If we set a tax rate and we project this is what revenues from taxes are going to be, we know what those numbers are going to be with regularity. Other thing I want to say on us being in a healthy spot financially, our fund balances for the general fund, for road and bridge fund, and for permanent improvement should be at around $22.7 million at the start of 2024, based on projections through the rest of the end of the year. Just to give a picture for y'all, that's about 30% of our annual expenditures, so 3.5 months of money. Whether or not that's the target we want to hit is, I think, something that this court can talk through in tonight if y'all want to, but definitely in future years to figure out if we're comfortable with that level, if we'd like it to be a little higher, if we'd like it to be a little lower. But I did want y'all to have a good picture for what that number is, where we're starting from in 2024. One of the concerns, y'all are all very well aware of this, inflation of 8% last year, 3% this year, but a really volatile number, has made budgeting even a bigger challenge than it would otherwise be. It also seems to be concentrated in areas that county government has as major portions of its budget. So, for example, road and bridge materials. I would challenge any of y'all, has inflation been 3% for your material costs this year? No. It's been much, much higher than that. Equipment costs, it's the same thing. Those numbers are a lot higher than the average inflation number for the whole country. And so we have to, again, project out 16 months in the future what the needs are going to be and how we hit those. Inflation has also been a big part of another challenge of staff recruitment and retention. The applicant pool for jobs here at the county does seem to get smaller and smaller, and it is becoming more and more difficult for us to stay competitive on wages. And so that number is going to mean either a reduction in services, or we are going to have to pay more to keep and recruit new staff. That is, to me, kind of baked into inflation and what we have to do to provide the level of services we need to do. The other thing I saw that led to some of the bigger decisions that were made in the proposed budget, there was a structural deficit that had been built in 2022 when the actual numbers came back in our general fund, where we had $2 million less in revenues than expenditures. And so that had stuck in the back of my mind. That wasn't just one-off bad luck or one-time costs. That was actual ongoing expenses that our revenues had run short in the general fund versus what the expenditures ended up being. To me, that meant a sign that we needed to right-size things a little bit, which is why I proposed one of the big reasons I proposed the tax rate that I did. The big ticket items, for those who want to just get a 30,000 foot overview of what the big ticket items are in the budget. Employee raises ended up being a total of a $1.3 million increase. Now, this is important. Of that, $650,000 of it is being paid for with state grants, specifically Senate Bill 22 grants. So there's $375,000 of a $500,000 grant that's going to be used to pay for jailer salaries out of that grant money, and then $275,000 that's coming to the DA's office to pay for salaries for their folks. So employee raises end up being $1.3 million. Our actual affected number to the budget was about half of that for what taxpayers are paying for. I'll use this as an opportunity. We talked about Senate Bill 22 grants a lot in court. Last week, the comptroller, a couple of folks from our auditor's office were at a presentation that the comptroller's office gave, and they'd given some new guidance, some new information on the grant. There's a lot of new information, but the big things for the budget were we can use that grant money to pay for fringe benefits, and we cannot use those funds to be in place of a COLA increase if we're giving one. Now, I had some back and forth over whether what's proposed in this budget is a COLA increase. I would suggest that it's not, because there are some proposed departments who did not give across the board pay raises. But, and again, in the interest of rather being safe than sorry, I don't want to jeopardize that grant. Make small changes to raise a little bit of what taxpayers are paying for, because we have to hit that 2% or 3% number for jailers and for our attorneys. And then, so that number has gone up a little bit, but essentially we replaced all of that money that went up by, we're just gonna use that grant money for vehicle purchases for the SO. So it ends up being a net neutral to the budget, but I did want you all to know that's why those numbers are a little different than the max salaries. Couple of other major cost increase items that have hit us from 2023 to 2024. Health insurance for employees is up $425,000 this year over
Yet
last
a
year.
nominal increase, but it's up that much money because we deal with such a large
Correct.
amount.
Yeah.
The
It's about
percentage increase was how much?
it's about 8%. But that, I mean, we're over $5 million now spent on health insurance benefits. The jail medical services contract is going to be a $350,000 increase over last year. And then road and bridge, this is an old number, it may be different now, but I was trying to just figure out what road and bridge increases were that are gonna be ongoing, because again, we're talking about inflation. And it looked to me like road and bridge is gonna be between all four about $500,000 increase. It's more than that in the budget, but those are one-time capital expenditures. Again, I've allocated $1 million in this budget to pay for new vehicles. Whether or not we end up going with the fleet management decision, that money is there for us to make decisions on purchases of vehicles.
Judge,
Yes.
hey, it's Mike.
Hey, Mike.
We received the finals from TAC today.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
Health insurance, it's actually 0.
it's a 0 increase for next year.
What is
So we budgeted on the projected 3% increase that they told us would be an estimate. And the final numbers today say there will be a 0 increase in our premiums for 2024.
Whoa.
How good is that?
That's a, they just sent it today?
They sent it to us this morning.
That's funny. Okay.
Wow.
Well, information to take, as we talk about some other things later on. Okay, thank you all for that.
Some fractions of.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. One final thing, then there was a change because the sheriff's office brought this to us. And we talked about this in court, but again, I'm just reiterating for anyone who's watching later. Any position in 561, so any position at the jail that is receiving an ARPA supplement, we increased their base salary by that $3,500 number that we did for the jailers, and then decreased the ARPA supplement by that $2,800 number that we talked about. As this court decided and discussed, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, thought that was the best way and fairest way to take care of, not to have so many moving pieces with ARPA and base salary. So that was a change that we made. There's a big one, and I wanted to bring that for us.
But I would assume we're still well in meeting the deadline.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's always a consideration.
Yeah.
But it is going to require some of the grant money to pull those salaries to the level.
Yeah. Well, so yes, we are using grant money first to pull all those salaries up to the $40,000 minimum that they had to be. The ones I'm talking about were already well above that minimum, so it's just we're going to use some grant money to pay for those increases as well. Okay, that's an overview. At this point, I'd like to talk about the changes that we've all agreed on in court that have been made. This is not going to be a item by item list, especially if it was just like a change in a position title or something that didn't have a budget impact. It was net neutral. But just as a reminder of some of the things that we have decided on in workshops, we had to raise the amount that we're going to be sending to the Wichita Appraisal District by $20,000 to pay our portion of the election that they are going to have to put on next May. It's a countywide election for 3 elected spots on the Appraisal District Board. That is something that we're doing in response to changes that the legislature made this last session. And that will probably be the only thing on the ballot at that election, and therefore they have to pay for the full freight.
And Tommy, on that note, what he's talking about, the seminar that we attended in Austin last week said you, as the designee of the board, you're the only staple on the board. And as such, you are a voting member of the board. You're still considered ex officio, but you're still a voting member of that board. You're the 9th member. And, you know, we've always
Voting ex
perceived,
officio, that doesn't make any sense.
none whatsoever, but the attorney for Harris County Appraisal District is the one that told us this at that seminar, that is, the statute says nothing about you being unable to be a voting member.
You know, Lisa said something in the hall the other day, Jeff, about, she said, Tommy, I believe you're gonna have voting rights.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Yep.
You've been getting lucky lately on that, haven't you?
But yeah, so our portion of that election is going to be $20,000, so we've made that change. As we also discussed, we're going to add child care partners to the recipients of support payments for and they'll be $15,000, and we're reducing the child welfare board number by $10,000. I already talked about the ARPA jail positions that weren't the jailer 1 through 5 to see the same salary increases as the jailers. Another thing that's come up since then, per decision by the district judges, the court reporter salaries were increased in line with the 2% number that would have applied broadly for the other departments for anyone making over $53,000. Tommy had a change that he's going to be, and we talked about this in court for 2023, but it's also going to continue in 2024, where the vehicle inventory tax is going to be paying for one of the positions now, and he's taken that money that was being paid out of his department budget for that position and reallocated it for staff in his office, so that has been changed. And then we added an extra, per commissioner's request, an extra $260,000 to contingencies for Road and Bridge 1, 2, and 4. Barry, did you also, I didn't have you in that, and I couldn't remember why. It should be you? Okay. All right.
But that will, all of those will come out of funds here.
It will come out of fund balance, yes.
Fund balance,
Yeah. Okay. So,
You said 265?
260.
Mine's in at 230.
Okay.
So that's about to be changed.
To that addition to contingencies, I was talking this morning, crude oil prices went up, and I was told this morning to expect our oil prices, road oil prices to go up considerably.
We open on Monday.
Well, not this bid, but the following bid they take, so they're gonna be considerably higher is what I was told. That's kind of, we put that in.
See, Judge, you make an excellent point in your opening remarks. There's 2 areas that really concern me. And I talk to people all the time that are thinking about retiring. I said, my goodness, I'd hate to retire into an inflated economy, because how do you plan?
Yep.
And it worries me, we're still 4 months away from really utilizing this deal, and this inflation is, I know I've heard it all on the radio too, but folks, things are still going up. And then the other leg of that is we've counted on Tommy and his group to do such a great job with these collections, but I was nervous this last year that we might fall off that 98% deal. And who knows where we're gonna be in 10. Boy, that's two big factors that'll keep you up night.
Yeah.
So,
And it's why you want to keep a good fund balance,
Absolutely.
because if the worst happens, and again, our job is to figure out what that good amount and that good number is, so that we're not
yeah.
taxing
I would bet
people.
money we would have fallen away from that 98 last year. I bet money on that at this time a year ago. But thank goodness we didn't, but concerns me.
So
As if you didn't have anything to worry about.
there's one big decision point, one thing I want to offer to the court and see if y'all are amenable to it. I was going through this again, looking over it, and it looks to me like we had the ability here to be able to come off of the proposed rate that's in here and lower it by a penny from what is proposed. And where that money was going to come from is, rather than have 6 million as the permanent improvement fund budget for 2024, we take that penny out and essentially just not transfer it from the general fund to permanent improvement. A penny at this point is just a tad under $1 million. It's about $985,000. And so I wanted to propose that. Where that would leave us is the new rate being proposed would be above the no new revenue rate, and it would be right at where our unused increment rate that's rolling off. It would be taking all of that money, and that would be what we were
Do you
using.
have the new number?
I do.
Judge, how would that affect our flexibility on the parameters of an increase that we're operating under now? You understand what I'm saying?
Now, can you?
Well, if we, in other words, certain amount of those tax increases go away, and is that gonna have an effect on us as we move forward?
I think all that this will accomplish, Barry, is not putting that one penny into permanent improvement, because the piggy bank is full enough to get us some work down the road, and there's no need to go ahead and charge the full board.
Well, I agree. I mean, anytime you drop it down, that's a good
Well,
thing.
and I was visiting with Commissioner Beecham on this, and looking ahead at the construction calendar for 2024, it looks to me like there was we didn't need $6 million, even including keeping some extra for the stuff we know we're going to have to pay for that are capital projects.
Yeah, and I had a discussion this morning with architects, and right now, we've got to finish the projects that we're on. We've got the 30th project that we're about to open that should be reimbursed, mostly, not all, but reimbursed mostly through insurance proceeds. That project will let before the end of this year. We should be able to be wrapping it up about this time next year. We really don't want to open up too much more
It'd be good
until
to
we
finish
get that
things.
done.
Yes.
Until we get
Yeah.
things finished.
Yep.
So that would give us time to work on the designs on the 4th floor. So it's cash flowing the money out a little longer.
Well, we're getting to the point we don't have to be as aggressive. We've got a functional deal. Tommy's gonna have his deal functioning, and
Yeah.
that makes a big difference. I mean, we had
We
some
need to get-
places we just had to get some work done. I mean,
And we still do, but.
And we still do, but it's-
in reality, we need to breathe,
Yeah.
so.
And there's still 4 months left of 2023, and then
How will
Yeah.
how will that affect, in 2022, we're 2 million short on our fund balance. In 23, we're gonna be around that 2 million also, I think.
No, because bear in mind, we jumped the rate at the end of 22 for the 23, the budget we're in right now. We increased that rate by just over 2 pennies, 2.1 cents. increase for the
Which should back up
23
there.
year, which should have brought us back to that.
What are
$2
the
million.
projections right now? Are they showing it? Because I thought we were
don't
gonna
have
show to be a
that.
little
No,
low.
we don't have that
That-
ability to project at this point to the end, but, I mean, we at least shored ourselves up $2 million in 2023 going forward. Yeah, we probably spent some money, but,
We,
So if you short that up, even the inflation rate would only account for a small
Right.
percentage of that deal.
Right.
So
Right.
you could almost, project that you should be in pretty good, maybe.
we're not gonna go to
15,
4,
20%. Yeah.
and I doubt we hit 2, but, I mean, we could lose a little money, but we will know we're on solid footing at this point because this is an injection of new blood.
To answer your question, so the new revenue increase now would be 3.311 million, which is a 6.65% increase in revenues from 2023.
And the
So what was
total
that-
rate,
Total rate now would be 5.542420.
and that's R&B, M&O, and INS.
Correct.
So what's the real percentage when we take off the added property?
I'll get my
added
calculator.
new value
Yep.
property? 'Cause that's the,
When
that's
you
the
take
real,
off the what, Mark?
the new value,
yeah.
cause before it
That's
was.
apples to apples when
Yeah.
you do that, yeah.
Hey, Mike or Cheryl?
Well, you've got just under $1 million of new value.
Yeah, it's 800. Well, except that's gonna change based on this new rate. I can do the math. I just might ask one of them to do it.
So before it was an 8.62% increase on the previous numbers with the actual increase of 7.36 to existing taxpayer rolls.
So I think
Not new property.
take
Well, it was $145 million worth of value, was it?
not taxable. No.
Was it what, closer to 120?
This- The new added property value is 844,031.
100.
844,031. So just,
No, what was the value that money is derived off of at the old rate, at the first projected rate? Where did that money come from? What was the?
Yeah. So,
I'm working on it.
okay,
This is gonna be napkin, but
that's fine.
You did say napkin, didn't
You did.
you? Always like to make sure I hear the right thing.
some of the best lyrics ever written were written on a napkin, so.
so that would drop the amount from new value to, if it was 145 million, to about 785,000.
Lose 100 grand.
So yeah, so that would
60.
means that you would have 2.5 coming in from existing property.
So the actual felt rate to the existing taxpayers would be what number? It's, if the whole rate's 665, it's gonna be a less than that whole rate. What is that number?
Give me 1 second.
Reminded that Saturday Night Live skit where they're doing the presidential debate. I was told there would be no math.
So I'm not very good at math, so I'm gonna fill a spreadsheet.
When your auditors, that does not instill confidence.
He just wants to make sure it's accurate. Yeah. Use the spreadsheet.
Now, wait a minute, yeah.
While he's working on that, though, the impression I'm getting from y'all, are y'all opposed to bringing that number down? To
Lowering
taking
the
that-
tax rate?
Yes, are you opposed to lowering the tax rate?
Absolutely
No.
not.
No, I
Okay.
think it's a good,
If we can get there, that's the goal. I mean,
it really, if we flow the projects correctly, it's not gonna, we're not gonna see it.
I'm sure they're having this same conversation in Washington DC tonight. Y'all opposed to a lower tax rate? Probably not. No.
Probably,
No, probably not.
Do you have, Jim, do you have that breakout of the 542420?
Yes. So it's now going to be, general fund's going to be 0.460395.
Okay.
Road and bridge is going to be 0.033037. Debt service is going to be 0.048988, which puts it at 0.542.
And that was, so that's strictly a change to M&O.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, the cleanest way, the easiest way to do that, and the one that was most straightforward, was just to take a full penny out of, a proposed penny out of M&O, and then account for it with a budget, essentially, all out of that one spot and transfers to permanent improvement.
So look at last year, so give me a second.
So that we don't have quite so much pressure on Mike to do math. While everyone's waiting, did y'all have any other things that you wanted to bring up as decision points, things we needed to change while we were here this evening?
I've got the sheet from Lisa, I can plug that number in just one.
Okay. Ooh, we're gonna have a race now.
You don't have a napkin, though.
No.
Need a napkin.
For our folks in the audience, did y'all have anything y'all wanted to bring up or say? Okay. Just giving the opportunity.
Now, I will say I have a substantial increase in Road and Bridge 1, Precinct 1, but it's all money that I've been setting aside since I've been here in order to do a much bigger project on Old State Road. And it's gonna coincide with the TxDOT Bridge project that they're doing on Old State Road, so we're gonna try to resurface with asphalt instead of chip seal.
Yeah.
So it's all coming out of fund balance.
Well, TxDOT's continue to improve those, the railroad stuff. Jeff, have you noticed that?
Yes.
Old Owl Park Road, that's looking a lot better. That's gonna be a big help.
Is that all those permit signs in Owl Park are for, that I see over by the railroad tracks?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're doing
I
several
did have a
of those
question for
crossings,
you.
which have
Okay.
been
And
a
I'm-
real bad spot.
Barry's got a bunch
It's
of
not-
stuff on Iowa Park Highway coming
Yeah.
towards
it's not.
City View
It's
369,
just
that the
in a way,
intersection doesn't align with the
with
old
you need
road.
to
Well,
make
the road comes
one
in straight and then it kind of makes
the
a
assistant
turn once it
slash
crosses
or
the culvert.
clerk.
So,
Or
and
would
it
be
has
better to
a
leave it like it is?
shoulder,
It's a
of a
district.
cemented
I should
shoulder
know.
on it,
But
so a
you can hire
bus,
two
You got a
clerks.
school bus pulled out there and then somebody's trying to come in off the road, it creates a tremendous, and we had one of them that was right over the top of the hill. So if a guy's sitting in the turn lane waiting on the bus to move, you could have
I
a
just don't-
really bad
Should
deal.
get
So they've got
pushed
that,
back.
they're
Couldn't
making
hire
some
two
really
clerks.
good improvements.
Oh, she was? Oh,
From
Great
the
job.
house back.
okay.
Well, it seems like on courthouse projects, we have more work to do than we have workers, is kind of the vibe I'm getting on.
That's kind of true. It's hard to flow the workers, to get all the trades lined up and keep them here. There's really more work in the trades, we have tradesmen to do the work all across town.
and yeah, Dave, that's going on, that's,
You don't
everybody's
lower
seeing,
a
it.
penny
Tommy's
right
seeing
like
it,
that. You should have done it with a bigger citizen
Robin's
crowd.
seeing, trying to interview candidates to help in, elections
Doing this
administration.
wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many she set up interviews, they never showed up.
I've had a job opening in building maintenance for 3 months now. I can't do it.
That's right.
And I've had probably 3 good operators, maybe TxDOT retirees. They come and ask about a job, then we visit, we offer them a job, and they don't come back and take the job. So, that's just, it's the nature of the beast right now, is that it's out there and it's rampant. Some of it's a twofold. Money's one issue, and then don't really want the job is the second issue. So
Most all of them like Fridays, they just don't really like the Monday through Thursday. If that makes sense.
Judge, the one of the things that I see, and Mike's on here too, and sent us a well-documented salary sheet.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that concerns me, and it was not, it's just an unapplied procedure that we do, because I realized in just talking with our girls here that about a couple of different salary positions across the area that came up had an argument about, well, this person can't be making that, our lowest rate is this. Well, we don't have a bar for that low rate. And so I think in a lot of instances, which we have to tax for this sheet,
Mm-hmm.
but we really don't know where we're at according to the sheet. And I don't know that when a position's set at 45,000, that a person should get to pay that position even though you can for 32,000. That's too much discrepancy, because we're then taxing when that increase comes along. We adjust that maximum salary, 45 to 46,000, but yet we're still paying only 33,000 on the rate increase going forward. And I don't know what the policy should be, but the margin needs to be narrower to some extent, especially because it exists in our lower level positions more so than it does anywhere else. But I think that today a county employee that's hired well under the $15 mark comes on board and they're thinking, I need to make sure I'm staying on top of what Indeed's posting out there, because there could be something that will help me survive a little longer. And so all I'm doing all day is watching those, because I'm coming in at a rate that promotes continuing looking for a job, when that's really not our concept. It wasn't ever our concept at the jail. The concept at the jail was get the rate here so that we can entice people to come and stay. But if we start them here and they don't ever earn, they never stay with us long enough to get to here. It's another thing to walk away from a $40,000 job versus a $32,000 job. I can get a $32,000 job, but I'm looking on Indeed, I can't find that many 40s. Well, we set it and we're taxing for 40.
Yeah.
But
the challenge there is that if you don't have that flexibility,
You gotta have some increases, some
you
available increase.
that you lose the ability for department heads to be able to reward throughout the year, like semi-annual performance reviews or whatever, to bring up something. I guess what you're talking about though is when that delta is too large between what that max salary is and what the person is at. Is that sort of what you're
that's
getting
what
at?
I'm saying, is that the delta can increase. We're taxing for the upper end of it, but we're not taking into account that, and it's very difficult to get right now, just like in talking with Mike yesterday. Here it is, August. There's no way to really predict what we can total what the totals were
Sure.
for 2023, but how true is that to the number, we don't know.
So the money you built in there to retain somebody, the person never gets to that area, so it's not. it's
No,
not doing the
I mean,
job.
this, just round numbers, I think there's 24 million bucks in here for salaries at top positions in 2023. But we could be paying 22 million, all said, all done.
And that money that's set in that budget never does its job because you don't ever get to that level.
Well, and the flip side of that though is that when you have like the jail, any difference that is made up there is undone by overages and overtime. So
Which we're still going in the hole on
yeah,
each year.
Correct.
So I'd be a little careful at,
trying
I
to.
will,
No,
I will say that for a large majority of departments, other than the jail and some professional offices where we're trying to get competitive pay, most departments are paying at the max. Honestly, they really are, which is why they don't really have room for growth and need that COLA allowances every year, because they don't have built in order to go over that max. They're already paying it. And our district clerk and our county clerks, largely in a lot of positions in our tax office. I know Tommy generally kind of gets there because they've earned it. They stay long with him. He has a great longevity in his office. Now our jailers, I do say they don't probably start out at that max rate, and they try to build in, and you're right, they never stay long enough to get that pay, but they make a ton in overtime. So, and we do build in a lot from fund balance to balance out the tax rate. We never actually tax enough to actually pay for what our budget is, so there is some consolation there.
Okay.
I'm worried that the cure might be more harmful to the
Costly.
patient than the disease on that one.
Hey guys,
Yes.
I'll get you an exact number, but you have to keep in mind I haven't done paper and pencil in many years. It's like a 5 1/4, but I'll get you an exact number.
Okay.
That's close enough
Well,
for right now.
the sheet that Lisa gave me carrying our numbers through now, so I'm showing just what you're showing, Judge, 3.3
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
is right where I'm at.
Yeah. And 5 1/4 sounds
3.3 is the decrease in the actual rate, right, Jeff?
No,
3.3 is the increase of what last year's tax rate brought us in revenue over what this year's tax rate is going to bring us in revenue. We're going to make an additional $3.3 million.
Correct.
yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I thought you,
Okay.
I thought we were talking about something else.
Okay.
Yeah, the question that Commissioner Beecham asked was about the actual rate on last year's taxpayer.
Yeah, it's 0.56,
Yeah.
0.560400,
That's 50.
Right.
all
Yes.
said, all done.
Yes, that was last year.
So, and then it's changing to 0.54, so it's dropped, nearly 2 cents.
No, I know what the tax rate.
5
but you're-
1/4, I think, is what you were.
Yeah, I'm looking for the actual percentage
He's taking.
increase to the existing taxpayer
He's taking
When you
out
take
the
out
new
new
revenue.
property.
when you take out new property.
The new property.
that'll just be a real feel.
No, it's a real field.
Yeah.
It's
It's not a,
What existing property tax payers and property owners are going to see.
yeah. Because we are increasing.
Well,
We're
yeah,
increasing the rate, we're increasing revenue.
yeah, about
I didn't
$3.3
see it,
million.
I didn't hear that on the news from the city. All they said was decrease. They didn't put the real feel on there. They just put the tax rate decrease.
Well, our
and-
tax rate is decreasing, but the overall net effect to the taxpayer mark is gonna be $3.3 million more in taxes than what
No,
they
I
paid last year.
understand that. But
Smaller percentage of a larger pie.
Yeah, I don't,
we're looking at a 6.65% total increase in revenue. But how much of that 6.65 is actual felt by
Yeah.
the existing taxpayers.
Well, are you talking 6.65%? Is that all tax revenue? Is that
Yes.
3.3? Well, then
Yes.
it's 6.65%.
No,
Yeah.
no, because you have the offset of the,
$700,000, which don't amount to a fraction when you talk about our populace. So that's basically, I mean, all you're capturing off the new value is $775,000 now with the decrease. So it won't
Three-quarters of
even
a
change the number hardly any.
Less than a penny. Right.
Y'all are talking about two different
Yeah.
denominators.
I'll write y'all up an email.
Thank you, Mike.
thank you.
Yeah.
Y'all are both right somehow, which is actually true. That does remind me, Cheryl and Mike, with the change in the rate, that will involve changing a few things in the executive summary and the cover
That's
section.
correct.
Yeah, but I know y'all are on top of it.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to see how this was gonna go tonight before I start making a bunch of changes that were unnecessary.
Sure.
So
Okay.
you should see a draft tomorrow at the latest. That way y'all have all weekend to think about it, and
Okay.
any corrections or whatever.
Okay, that would be great. And I'll take this as one final opportunity to ask, if you see something in your department budget that you want to flag, please do so sooner rather than later, because we'd like to not have to make budget amendments, or some of these things we can't change. So
What was out of this salary sheet, and Mike, this may be you, Judge, you may know it, but how many salaries were not affected by this rate increase here? The salary increase that's proposed.
every single salary in the budget was impacted by a rate, by a raise. I don't think that there was a single position that didn't see an increase. Now, there were some departments that chose not to do the blanket, and they proposed higher increases in some and lower in others. But I believe, Jeff, don't make me a liar, but I believe
Every department except the auditor's
except the
office.
auditor's office,
And,
and that is not set by us. So,
and elected officials.
and elected.
And elected officials.
Thank you.
Because Tommy stared all through you.
But there was a $5,000 auto allowance added in for the commissioners.
Yeah, but half of that's to make up for what we approved last year that we didn't receive.
So,
It never made it into the budget, so.
so the top line answer to your question is non-elected official position and non-county auditor. Every position saw an increase of some sort. The vast majority of them were based on the 2%, 3% amount. And again, I'll just say that again: 2% was for anyone over 53,000. 3% was for anyone under 53,000. So bigger increases for those making under the median income for the county.
But that really didn't cost us from that 2 and 3, even though that was the number utilized. Grant money kicked in and underwrote half of these changes.
So yes, that's correct. Because the max salaries does have to reflect what the grant money will also be. And then the grant on the back side funds those positions.
This was
at
that
rate.
state, so DA's office and sheriff's office both fell under these categories, which allowed them to utilize special state monies flowing specifically to them, but incorporated, so their changes incorporated into our budget, but they're grant money
Right.
driven.
That's correct, Commissioner. And the Public Defender's Office has a couple of positions as well that's funded by a grant.
It's just not SB 22.
Right, it's not SB 22. He got a new grant and he moved some people around to maximize that grant monies to minimize county tax dollars used. So he did a great job with that. And all positions that have any grant money associated will have a little asterisk on your max salary sheets to kind of notate that.
All right. Does anyone have any other topics they want to bring up to discuss on this? I have to be very careful. Don't want to just say any topics anyone wants to discuss. Or any other questions on the budget?
I think so.
Okay. Then,
We appreciate the public outpour.
thank you, everyone. It's 6:56 and court is adjourned.
See y'all tomorrow.